How would you like a 15% discount to my daily email, the stack of stuff, the show notes, discounts to the conference, all of that? All you need to do is text the word show to 33777. You'll get the annual subscription with a 15% discount to my daily email. You'll get the stack of stuff, the links to the show notes, discounts to the conference, and so much more. All you have to do is text the word show, SHOW, to 33777. Text show to 33777.
Welcome to the Eric Erickson Show podcast, Hour 2.
My fellow Americans, welcome. It is Eric Erickson here across the United States. I hope it is warmer where you are than it is where I am. Some of you quite cold out there. My apologies to those of you in Connecticut. My goodness gracious, I saw some pictures of the snow up there. Gracious. 877-973-7425 is the phone number should you wish to be on the program. Fareed Zakaria is a progressive. He is a liberal. He hosts a CNN show on the weekends. He is one of the elite. He is one of the voices the elite listen to, particularly on the left, about foreign policy and other matters, and he's kind of had enough of blue cities. His monologue and an accompanying op-ed in a newspaper have gone viral. And I was going to talk about it yesterday, ran out of time. I want to play for you this clip from Fareed Zakaria on CNN this weekend.
New York is really a prime example of a problem Democrats seem unwilling to confront. Blue cities are out of control, promising more, spending more, delivering less, and pushing off the fiscal problems to some future day. Take Los Angeles, another one-party metropolis wrestling with affordability and disorder. The city's homelessness budget for fiscal year 2025-26 totals about $950 million. The LA Homelessness Services Authority reported that in 2023, homelessness was up 9% countywide and 10% in the city. And a 2024 AP account noted that homelessness has surged 70% countywide since 2015 and 80% in the city. All this amid public frustration despite billions spent. An audit reviewed $2.4 billion in city homelessness funding and found that officials could not reliably track where it went or what it achieved. Or take Chicago, with a mayor whose approval rating is deep underwater, where the pension promises are so large that they will surely bankrupt the city at some point. What is the theory of good government here? If the answer is keep adding programs, the city will keep producing unaffordability, because unaffordability is what happens when government becomes a machine that grows faster than the society it governs.
Yes. People are getting overwhelmed. You know, New York, they pride themselves in their government services. But as I mentioned last week on the program, New York City has a budget just for the city of 8 million people that is larger than the entire state budget of Florida. And Democrats responded by saying, but in Florida, you've got local governments too, and they've got taxes too. Now do that. It's like, okay, but you're missing the picture here. New York State has fewer people than Florida and has a larger budget than Florida. And then the people in New York City have a larger budget than the state of Florida and fewer people than Florida. So you've layered the state of New York and the city of New York, some massively $100 billion more than just the budget for the state of Florida. You cannot find a city in the state of Florida that adds to the budget bottom line and surpasses the New York State, New York City combined budgets. And yet the Democrats think just adding more layers of government is good, and it's starting to break. In California, they still haven't started rebuilding from the Palisades fire. And yesterday it came out that the city of Los Angeles is starting to fine homeowners for not taking care of the brush growing on their property. So they're not allowed on their property to build, but they have to show up and mow the grass and get rid of the weeds, or else they're going to get fined, even though the city of Los Angeles won't yet allow them to rebuild. Let me read you this, and let me tell you where this comes from. This is the sheriff in Sacramento, California, the official page of the Sacramento County Sheriff's Office. Those of you listening on KST, you've probably heard about the story. The rest of the nation, maybe not. Let me play this. Let me read this for you. The people of Sacramento and every parent across California deserve answers. The California Parole Board has granted parole to David Allen Funston, a serial child molester who used candy and toys to lure children 7 years and younger. He was convicted of 16 counts of kidnapping and child molestation. Multiple young children were victimized, some as young as 4 years old. He was sentenced to more than 20 years in prison, along with 3 additional consecutive sentences of 25 years to life. A judge described him as the monster parents fear the most. Yet today, the parole board has determined he is suitable for release. How do they explain that to those children and their parents? How do they tell families that a predator of this nature is no longer a risk? Under California's elderly parole program, inmates over 50 are eligible for parole. He is 64. Age does not erase predatory behavior. It does not undo grooming. It does not restore stolen childhoods. Childhood sexual predators do not suddenly become safe because they turn 50. They cannot be rehabilitated. Most states exclude heinous crimes like this from elderly parole. California does not. Today, a survivor bravely spoke about what this decision means. Detective Rodriguez, who worked the case, knows firsthand what this man was capable of and how he was caught. The elderly parole program was meant for those who no longer pose a danger. In cases like this, it fails. Our number one responsibility is to protect children. That should never be controversial or partisan. Protecting children is not rhetoric. It is common sense. Protect children first, always. And yet the California Parole Board decided to release from prison a man who victimized and molested and kidnapped 16 children, some as young as 4 years old. What is going on with progressive enclaves? What is going on? In Washington, D.C., they had to bring in the National Guard to tamp crime down. In Memphis, it turned into a third world hellhole. I've told you all this story before, I think. My sister and brother-in-law live just north of Memphis. They have a friend of theirs from their church who is a police officer in Memphis. He and his wife were going to the Caribbean on vacation. They had a flight, an early morning flight. They left their home at 3 o'clock in the morning, had to get off the interstate in downtown Memphis to get to the airport, and were shot at a stoplight at 3:30 in the morning. Luckily, they were grazed. He called for backup. The police came. Random young men in the bushes shooting people at the stoplight. They weren't targeted. It was just random shooting. They still, by the way, managed to go on their vacation. He was patched up at the scene. A police officer didn't want to go to the hospital. It was just a graze. He returned fire, by the way. But that was just random shootings in Memphis, controlled by Democrats. Gavin Newsom, the governor of California, whose parole board just let out of jail a serial child molester, came to Atlanta this weekend to campaign for Keisha Crimeway Bottoms. She's the former mayor of Atlanta, who the black voters in Atlanta turned their back on her because crime got so out of hand with her governance. And yet Gavin Newsom, with no clue of her background, decided she's the one in Georgia he would support to earn goodwill for running for president. In New York City, Mayor Mamdani, who is disgusted by federal plans that would require you to have to show ID to vote, is demanding multiple pieces of identification if you want to get paid by the city of New York as a volunteer snow shoveler. The city's services are too overwhelmed to shovel the snow. They still can't pick up the trash and get rid of the snow from the snowstorm several weeks ago. And now they're buried under with snow, and they want you to come help, but you've got to show ID. They say they're just complying with federal law. Progressive governance keeps breaking down around the country. You can't build houses in blue parts of the country because it's too expensive. The school outcomes for your children are worse in blue parts of the country than red parts of the country. A black child in Mississippi in third grade is more likely to be literate than a black child in California in the same socioeconomic class. Crime in blue cities tends to be worse than in red cities and red states. District attorneys are more lenient with crime. I mentioned this yesterday on the program. I live in the middle of Georgia. We have one of those Soros-backed prosecutors. I don't know that she was actually funded by Soros, but it's basically the same thing. A group of progressives got together and funded this woman and got her elected. Multiple murderers have been let out of prison without being prosecuted. Others, they've dropped the cases or they've lost the cases. They've lost evidence. All the good assistant district attorneys were either fired or fled. Now, state police are telling me and others that organized crime has set up shop in my county because they know that they're not going to be prosecuted by the local prosecutor who's not capable of prosecuting a ham sandwich for anything. The left is bad at local governance. In Nashville, Tennessee, the left is in charge there. They're driving up property taxes so much to pay for more government services that people don't actually need that longtime businesses are closing down. And the mayor's response is, well, it's not my fault if they can't pay their taxes. That's the mayor in Nashville, Tennessee. Longtime historic businesses are shutting down because they can't afford the property tax hike in downtown Nashville. The mayor's like, well, not my fault. Yeah, actually, it is your fault. You're the one raising the property taxes. They layer additional government services on. Then they have to raise taxes. Mamdani in New York is upset with the state of New York for refusing to raise taxes on rich people across the state and giving him the money in New York City. So he's going to raise property taxes on everybody in New York City by 9.5%. You know what the progressive reaction is? Not making it up. True reaction is, well, most people in New York aren't homeowners and landlords, so they're not going to pay. 65% of people are renters, so they don't pay property taxes. That's really the reaction of the left. Do they not know how property taxes work? Even the rent-controlled properties, you're allowed to raise the rent when the property tax goes up. Pass on the costs to the person who actually lives there. The left doesn't know how to govern. Ezra Klein, who is a major progressive, has written his book about abundance. And there's a backlash to that from the left that we don't want these low-income properties in our backyard. We need housing for the poor, just not in our backyard. In Atlanta, they won't let you cut down trees on your property. It's driven up the cost of building a house in Atlanta, Georgia. You can't cut down a tree without government permission, as opposed to cut it down and replant later. No, you're not allowed to. You got to build your house around the tree and hope it doesn't fall. The left is ideologically coherent and intellectually bankrupt when it comes to governance. We put him in charge of the nation for 4 years, and for the first time in a very long time, we had out-of-control inflation. They said it was transitory, it wasn't real, and then it was going to go away quickly, and then it wasn't going to go away, and then it was Donald Trump's fault. We put him in charge of the military, and they stopped being able to build ships with urinals. They had to put in toilets to accommodate the women they put on the ships, and the toilets don't work. We can't build in this country weapons. We can't build ships, and when we do, they don't work right. But hey, the unions, they keep getting great contracts and then refunding the money to the Democratic Party to keep getting reelected. We have Fareed Zakaria on CNN, who is a progressive, the elite of the elite, saying, hey, you guys aren't good at running things these days. You need to get better. You need core competence. It provides Republicans, if you're listening, Republicans, it provides you an opening to campaign not on your ideological loyalty to Donald Trump or your fealty to conservative principles or to attest to how much you've read the Bible and conscience of a conservative, just basic competence, basic get stuff done. I have a friend of mine here in my local community who wanted to open a business. Said the biggest opponent of him opening his business was planning and zoning. They were the most difficult people to work with. 2 parts of planning and zoning expected you to have the other part done before you went to them. Neither one could coherently tell you, how do I get this done before I get that done, or that done before this done? There was no plan. It was the most business unfriendly environment. And as a former lawyer who helped businesses get started, I can tell you, planning and zoning departments can make or break a city, and they're starting to break mine. They broke San Francisco, and the left says, well, the solution is we need more bureaucracy to fix it, as opposed to killing the bureaucracy. The left is destroying American cities, and that should provide Republicans an opening if they're smart. Hello and welcome. It's Eric Erickson here across the United States. The phone number is 877-973-7425 to Magnolia, Kentucky. Charlie, you're up next. Welcome.
Hey, thank you for taking my call. Can you hear me okay?
Yep, sure can.
Okay, great. Hey, thank you for the little segment you did on the Ahmadi and Iran. That was really insightful, but I got a follow-up question. And
Okay.
the question for me is why? Why now? Why go after Iran now? I'd be curious to hear your thoughts, and then I have a follow-up with that.
I think the main reason is, and it goes to what Alireza Jafzara said yesterday, is Hamas is gone, Syria is gone, Hezbollah is gone, and the Houthi have been disabled. So the Iranian state propped up these buffers to protect itself, knowing that there would be retaliatory strikes. If you went after Iran, they would come behind you and attack you. And now they're all gone. The regime is destabilized. They're out of cash now. We've largely been blocking a lot of oil supplies out of Iran, so they're financially unstable. They're fiscally insolvent, and their allies are no more. So this is kind of the time. Plus, there actually is an organic nationalist uprising inside the country.
Yeah, I mean, the fact that we were kind of successful in that bombing effort, and like you said, the Houthis in Yemen and the Hezbollah and so forth are crippled, it would make you sort of think that now may not be necessary to go after them.
No, I think you've got to, this is the only right time, because otherwise, if you don't go now, they risk resettling opposition forces in other countries, which they were good at one point, getting started. And then you also have the situation where if you don't go after them now, they do have the capability of rearming from the Russians and from the Chinese, and then suppressing this nationalist movement. The Iranians don't care about murdering their citizens because they know the citizens don't support them. So you're kind of in this sweet spot right now where they don't have allies who can attack for them. They have yet to rebuild their cash reserves to fund terrorism. And internally, you have this massive resistance moment. So it's either you go after them now or you miss the opportunity. Now, let's say you stood in line at the DMV and you paid the fee for your license and you smiled for your photo that didn't turn out good. And then the DMV turned around and sold you and your name. They sold your address. They sold your accident history, your court records, all exposed to lots of companies that mean to use your data to spam you. And the state pockets millions. You're not just the customer, you're the product. But it gets worse. Data brokers take your DMV info and they layer it on your credit score, your shopping habits, your social media. There's a digital file on you ready for sale. Insurers then buy it and they raise your rates. Scammers use it to steal your identity, all because you renewed your driver's license. Incogni fights back for you. They contact hundreds of data brokers and legally demand your information be deleted. And if you find your info floating online, we'll send Incogni a link and their team will handle the takedown. Get 60% off at incogni.com/Eric. Take back your privacy. Incogni, INCOGNI, incogni.com/Eric. Hello and welcome. It is Eric Erickson here across the United States. I hesitated whether or not to bring this up, but I'm going to bring it up because I've noticed a bunch of youngins, a bunch of historically illiterate people who claim to be on the right, making the case for we need judicial activism on the right. We need to blow up the system. In fact, hang on a second. Let me just find you one of the tweets that's indicative of this. And what's so wild to me about it, too, is how much of it has resurfaced after the president lost in the Supreme Court the tariff case. Now, it's an argument that's been circulating for some time, but it has picked up steam with a certain portion of the right that is not conservative. They say they're on the right because they're in opposition to the left, but to a degree, they maintain many of the same goals as the left. In fact, a lot of these people who claim to be new right are actually very old left. They are pro-tariff, pro-unionization, pro-judicial activism. Many of them aren't wedded to being pro-life, or some of them are conservative, and yet they're socially conservative, but not conservative otherwise. I see this one person who's a member of the New Right saying Conservatism Inc. accomplished nothing except conceding every argument to the left so they wouldn't call us racist or whatever. They called you racist anyway. You're getting what you deserve. Well, what the hell is this? In all honesty, the conservatives actually won the argument. In the Supreme Court on life, conservatives won the argument on the Second Amendment. Conservatives won the argument on tariffs. Conservatives keep winning arguments before the Supreme Court. So suddenly we need judicial activism. These people aren't on the right. Here's another one. I know FedSoc, that is Federalist Society people, love to talk about being constitutional originalists and abstract. To the left's judicial activism, that's honorable, but I think it's time to come to terms with reality and recognize that right-wing judicial activism is on the way. This is just left-wing pablum masquerading as a right-wing talking point. We keep racking up wins in the courts with conservatives. Here's the Notre Dame College Republicans. Notre Dame College Republicans. For the last 4 decades, American manufacturing has been systematically dismantled. Millions have lost their jobs and livelihoods. Critical supply chains have moved to hostile countries. Hardware productivity gains have collapsed. And consumption has been increasingly financed by mortgaging off the future to foreigners. He who saves his country violates no law. We urge President Trump to defy the Supreme Court's lawless, disgusting ruling today. The Supreme Court saying that the president used the wrong statute to impose tariffs was, in the words of the Notre Dame College Republicans, a lawless, disgusting ruling, and then embraced the Maoist saying that he who saves his country violates no law. My buddy Dan McLaughlin, who writes his baseball crank and writes at National Review, used to write with me at Red State. He replied to this tweet and he said, "You infants, you fools, you simpering, lily-livered poltroons. You have no idea what your patrimony costs to build, yet you would throw every last bit of it away for one old man, and do so after 5 decades of patient efforts to, at long last, have the courts we have today. If you were old enough to remember Joe Biden, you know how much Catholics in particular depended upon the courts of the Constitution. I will laugh bitterly from the gulag when you were all just a stain on President for Life AOC's tank treads." The left likes to abandon principles. The left has no sense of history. The left is here for the here and now. And that's what these new right kids are. They're leftists. They're the woke right. They're the progressive right. What are progressives? Progressives, at the end of the day, in postmodern terms, progressives believe that the world must be seen through power dynamics. And these people on the right who see the world that way, they're progressives. You think of progressives as being on the left, but there are progressives on the right, that they want to be in charge. They don't care what the outcome is. They want to be in charge. They have no principle. Some of you are like that now. You think, oh, well, the left is going to win, so we better beat them thoroughly. What you're actually getting at is you're not man enough to admit, you're not brave enough to admit you want a dictatorship. That's what some of you on the right who say these sorts of things. We need activist judges to dismantle the left. What you really want is you want a dictatorship. You want Donald Trump for life. You can't admit it. You're not brave enough to admit it. You're cowards. You know what it will be for you to admit what you really privately want. You want Donald Trump for life. You don't want the chance that the Democrats might win again. That's what's actually going on with a lot of these arguments. You have a bunch of chickens who want a dictatorship. They follow this Kurdish Yavin guy who tweeted out the other day, destroy everything. He actually is one of the only few people brave enough to say he wants a monarchy. He wants the end of the American Constitution, and he wants a monarchy. He wants the rule of law imposed on you, not democratically voted on. And part of their target is the United States judicial system because they see the left putting judicial activists in, and then they pay no attention to the fact that the activists keep getting beat down by courts of appeals and the Supreme Court. Consider the last 50 years in the United States of America. The United States Supreme Court, after a 50-year concerted effort by conservatives to take it over, has struck down Roe v. Wade, ending abortion on demand across the country. They've dismantled the Chevron doctrine that propped up the technocrats of the bureaucracy to lord over us. They nuked the Lemon test, which made states default have to side with secular interests instead of religious interests. They restricted the executive power of Democrats and restricted the executive power of conservative presidents, Republican presidents, and liberal presidents alike. They've slapped down states for violating religious liberty during COVID. They allowed people to worship. They have protected Catholic charities from progressives trying to stop their business before the state. They have stopped progressives from attacking butchers, bakers, and candlestick makers for refusing to honor gay marriage. This is what the courts have done because conservatives over 50 years patiently built a conservative Supreme Court. And along come the populists on the right who do not have principle, they have power. They are the populist progressives of the right, and they say we need to blow this all up because Donald Trump didn't win his tariff decision. Donald Trump not winning his tariff decision allowed Donald Trump to impose a 10% tariff on everything, as opposed to a 50% tariff here and a 100% tariff there and a 5% tariff there and whatever scattershot ridiculous approach. He's now got a uniform 10% tariff going up to 15% until the courts strike that down as well because he's using a section of the law that he himself argued before the Supreme Court didn't apply and had no power anymore. But hey, the progressives on the right, they just want power like the progressives on the left. All of us Americans, you do understand, who are normal people who love our country, are held hostage to the whims of the progressive right and the progressive left, who just want power. And they don't want to share the power. And they don't want to think about the impermanence of American politics, where in this country there is no such thing as permanence. One day the Democrats are on top. One day the Republicans are on top. Time and time again, the role flips. What the cowards on the left and the right refuse to admit is that they want to end the flip-flopping. They want to end the American ability for the pendulum swing. They want to fix their party in power and never have to give it up. I actually like the American system. I think it's the best system we've created. It's not perfect. It would be more perfect if we had a more moral people. That's one of the arguments now on the progressive right is that we don't have a moral people anymore, so we need a dictator. No, actually, I think we need a more moral people. And you know what you start with moral people is you start by saying, you know what? I'm not going to support immoral people for office. But many of you can't bring yourself to do that, can you? Because many of the people on the right are afraid that the people on the left will do to them what you now want to do to the left. So you can't just say, you know what, I'm done. I'm done. You can't say, I refuse to vote for Ken Paxton because he's a moral cretin. Nope, because you'd rather him than the left. So you've given up your virtue and you're shocked that the country has become amoral. You've given up insisting character counts, and now you don't like the direction of the country. So your next step is, instead of going back to character counting, now let's just have a dictator. Let's have activist judges to give us transactionally what we want and blow up the system. And you can't even realize you're the one who did it. You keep blaming the other side. You keep blaming the other side. Ben Sass had that interview I played you the other day. This is a quote from his interview: America only works if people are deliberative, if people are thoughtful, if people say my soul matters, my kid's soul matters, but my neighbor's soul matters too. So I want to have a polity that works, but I know that you can't compel a soul, so power isn't the main thing. Our loves are the main thing. A lot of people on the left and the right, they just love power. We do have these people who have come into the right, and they're only on the right now because they don't like the left. They were of the left. They embrace power for the sake of power. My question for you is, can you appreciate what you've gotten from the United States Supreme Court over the last 50-year project of moving it to the right, the protection of your religious liberties, the protection from a president being able to impose taxes at whim without Congress being involved, the protection of your religious liberty rights, the protection of your civil liberties, the protection of you, a parent's ability to raise your children as you see fit? Do you appreciate you got that because of a conservative project of the court? What has conservatism conserved? The family, the Second Amendment, the right to life, religious liberty protections in the Constitution. Conservatism's conserved a lot. If you don't think conservatism's conserved anything, it's because you're probably too hyper online and you really don't care about conservatism. You care about power and not wanting to lose it. And that next step is a dictatorship, and it's not going to work in this country under our current system. So many of these people who have come into the right, they don't care about the system. They don't even care about the country. And in fact, many of them are the ones who, in the left's in power, they lose their patriotism. They're as transactional as the people on the left are. Many of them are young, brazen on social media. They have no intellectual foundation. They've never even read a book on ideas. They don't know who Milton Friedman is. They don't know who Hayek is. And they don't know who Barry Goldwater is. They have no appreciation for anything other than the here and now. It's us versus them. It's tribal. It's not ideas-based. And I'm sorry. I refuse to be so tribal that I abandon my principles and ideals. And my principle and my ideal is very simple. We hold these truths to be self-evident that all men are created equal. They are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, including life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. That is the American ideal. And to the extent you decide we have to throw the baby out with the bathwater to protect you from the left, you've become no longer anything other than the left, and you have decried and shamed the founding principles of this country, which I think are very good things. We are 250 years in, and it is remarkable to see the number of voices on the right who at 250 years of a young nation want to blow it all up just so they can keep power forever and keep it from the left, as opposed to recognizing that our founders were geniuses and you are a bunch of arrogant little brats who know nothing about the history of this country and the reason we are structured the way we are. And maybe you should sit back, shut up, and live life instead of rushing to Twitter to say, blow it all up, because you don't want the other side to have it. That's the only way to ensure they get it. I want to read you a headline. This is from February 7th, 2014. The end of snow. It's in the New York Times, The End of Snow, by Porter Fox, about how, thanks to climate change, snow is going to stop. It had a question mark then. And then January 2nd, 2024, the question mark is gone, and the headline is The End of Snow. In 2024, fast forward 2 years to February 23rd, 2026, here is the headline in the New York Times. Record snowfall slams New England and leaves New York City snarled. 3 feet of snow fell in parts of Rhode Island. It's not clear if many trains and bus lines around the New York region will run on Tuesday. 36 inches of snow 2 years after the New York Times declared that snow would come to an end, including in New England, due to global warming. Perhaps, just perhaps, Americans would take the climate change hysteria seriously if it was, well, less hysterical. All right, let's see. Britt, want to take your phone call. Welcome to the show. How are you?
I'm great, Eric. How are you?
Good. What's going on?
So I was hoping you could elaborate on this story. I didn't read too in-depth on it, but I had to chuckle when I read that, according to the article I read, that the mayor of New York is requiring 2 forms of ID to shovel snow.
Yep. Hang on. Here he is.
Amidst this, DSNY has been hard at work to expand their supervision capacity for the snow shoveler program. And as of today, they can now deploy 1,800 New Yorkers per shift. Due to the historic nature of this blizzard, we've increased pay to $30 per hour. You can walk into any DSNY garage until 8 p.m. this evening and then starting again at 9 a.m. tomorrow. All you need to bring is 2 forms of ID to ensure you get paid.
Yep. 2 forms of ID, Britt. You got to have 2 forms of ID. Now, he says it's to comply with federal law because it's essentially a money from the federal government being passed along, and so they can't hire illegal aliens. But you should only need 1 form of ID, but New York is making you bring 2 forms of ID. But God forbid, think about that. It's harder to shovel snow in New York now than to vote.
That's what I was thinking.
Yeah.
Well, you know what? You get what you vote for, right?
That's exactly right. You do. I literally, folks, in New York City, it is easier to go vote than it is to get paid to snow for your city because you need no ID in New York to go vote. But to shovel snow and get reimbursed for your efforts, you're going to need 2 forms of photo ID. Actually, I take that back. You need 1 form of photo ID and then a second form for proof of residence. Yeah. It's kind of funny, actually, isn't it? Very, very interesting. By the way, there's some news happening right now you should know about. A Gang of 8 meeting has been summoned for 3 o'clock today. What is the Gang of 8? Well, that's the Speaker of the House Minority Leader, the Senate Majority Leader, the Senate Minority Leader, and then Representative Rick Crawford of Arkansas, Jim Himes of Connecticut, Tom Cotton of Arkansas, and Mark Warner of Virginia. And if you know them, they're the members of the Intelligence Committee. And now apparently the director of the CIA and the Secretary of State will be there for this meeting, which suggests we're about to blow up Iran. We'll see. More on that when we come back. Now, I got to tell you about Swiss America, which is helping you keep your sense about yourself in the global financial markets right now, and they can help you with your retirement and finances. If you go on YouTube, check out Swiss America Trading. They've got a great podcast, pretty informative about global currency markets, what the BRIC nations are doing with gold and with the American Reserve currency, and they want to send you their secret We're on Cash report. It can help you with your retirement and finances. It takes less than 15 minutes to read. All you have to do is call or text 800-289-2646. That's 800-289-2646. Let Swiss America get you their report for free. Just mention my name, Eric, E-R-I-C-K. When you call or text 800-289-2646. All that We're on Cash includes digital forms of currency. You can't escape it without education, and Swiss America can educate you. So get their report completely free. 800-289-2646 or go to SwissAmerica.com/Eric, SwissAmerica.com/ERICK. Message and data rates may apply.